Welcome to Breakdowns with Bromley. We haven't had one in a little while, but today I have a very special guest. His name is Jason Hawronsky, and he is the owner of Jasco Games, which most of you should be familiar with because all 12 of our viewers play this Universes game that he owns.
I have a hand in this one. This game here.
Small bit. And for Jason has been a dream of mine to interview for a long time because I think that he's a very interesting character. I'm talking about you in the third person, but
I appreciate that. Chris Bromley is an interesting character as well.
That's just we're two interesting, wild and crazy guys. Here to have a good night. So Jason, I wanted to take you from the beginning of it all, right? When I Googled you because I tried to do research, right? You come back as the owner of Jasco Games, of course, right? I got a birthday, January 1987. Is
86.
that correct? 86. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. They were wrong. And that Jasco Games wasn't founded in 2010 when UFS was bought. It's been around in Lubbock, Texas, and somewhere else, like Rose something in Texas. Since
it was in the DFW area in Flower Mound since 1998.
So I'm assuming that this is a family business because I don't think you were. Did you own the store at age 12?
13.
13.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So I started my retail store at 13.
Wow.
The tax ID and everything was registered through my mom, but I ran everything and then took it over from her once I was 18. She thought it'd be a fun learning experience to allow me to do this thing and order stuff and sell stuff to my friends and that kind of thing. So wherever you want me to jump in, I can start all the way back in 1998 if you'd like.
Well, I mean, that alone is a really interesting. Most parents don't help their kids start a business at 13.
I can explain why. So I was back then. I was really into Warhammer and Warhammer Fantasy, specifically Warhammer Fantasy more than any of the other ones. But I've played all the Games Workshop stuff.
Here, I have some models. I have some models to show you.
Oh, nice.
This is my Everqueen model.
Sweet.
A bunch flying around.
You play what else?
I have a bunch of armies. Way too many. We've spent a lot of money.
Yeah.
I do love what else.
I've got this whole top row is all Games Workshop stuff right there.
Very cool.
And it's probably actually the second row is also Mega Man and Games Workshop stuff. There's a whole Space Wolf down in there.
Very cool. I'll have to bring out a Sigmar army and we could play sometime in Vegas.
I mean, to be honest, I haven't played in years. I paint still. I have a lot of paint. Right. I have like the entire Reaper collection, most of the Citadel collection, a little bit of Vallejo. I'm looking over at it right now. A lot of I have a airbrush, a bunch of other stuff. But I used to paint professionally for quite a while for tabletop minis, and then there was a Chinese company that just like knocked me out of the market by their pricing. They could do basically the same quality as me, but like charge like 10 cents a model or something. So I was like, and I'm out.
Yeah. At that point, so originally you were doing modeling. It was gaming, as in like tabletop, serious war game stuff. How did you get into?
So here's how the story starts. So I moved to the Dallas area from West Texas.
Okay.
I'm originally from North Dakota, and so my family moved to Texas when I was 5. Shortly after that, the Minnesota North Stars came to Texas to become the Dallas Stars, and then won a Stanley Cup in 1999. Just so you guys know, it's my fault. I also moved to Vegas, and we got a Vegas team that could make the finals again this year. So we'll see what happens there. Again, my fault. So if I move somewhere, we'll probably get a good hockey team for at least temporarily. So anyway, we moved to the Dallas area, about 15 minutes out, maybe 20 minutes out from the airport, from the DFW airport.
Sure.
And near Grapevine Mills Mall and all that stuff. And back then, it was Denton was the closest game store to my house, which was about a 30 to 45-minute drive one way. And so every weekend, I got all my friends after I moved there into this game called Warhammer Fantasy that I told you about. And it wasn't a big thing in that area within the school. It was junior high at the time. I was just starting junior high. And so I got my friends into it. And so every weekend we would all pile into my mom's car, drive all the way down to the store called Big World Comics. I think it's still there. I don't know if it's the same owners or anything, but we would buy our models and bring them back home and assemble them and paint and battle till like 5 a.m. and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun. So I got a lot of friends into it. And it got to the point where I think it was just annoying my mom to be driving a big car full of kids every single weekend. Nobody else's parents would volunteer. It was always her. And so I was like, hey, Mom, why don't we just like see if we can open up an account? Let's just call Games Workshop, see what it costs, and we can just do it here. And she's like, well, it could be a learning experience. We'll see. So we called Games Workshop. We ran stuff out of my house originally, out of my guest room. We just cleared the guest room out. It was about the size of this room. We just put like shelving up and made it look like a little store. And I was selling Games Workshop products. I eventually also got everybody into Yu-Gi-Oh! Back in the day. Like at that time, it would have probably been like set 3, 2 or 3 for Yu-Gi-Oh! Because set 1 had come out already before I moved. And so I was selling Warhammer and Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards. I did get the account. I ended up negotiating the minimum startup order with them because I only wanted fantasy. I was clearly not like a full retail store. But we pulled some strings, talked to their sales rep that was there at the time, and made it work. And I think we were able to get in for only like $1,500, which is still a lot for a 13-year-old. It's actually like a terrifying amount of money to be in charge of. But that's what I started with. It was a good time in my mom's life and career to do that because she just got a bunch of consulting jobs and stuff. So it wasn't a big like financial risk on the family or anything. So she invested into me then. And through the years, I just put all the money back into the business. So everything we did, I got all my friends at school to play. Everybody probably still knows everything about what happened back then in Warhammer and a bunch of different tabletop games. And we also did a bunch of anime sales. But over time, we got more and more and more. Like I said, I kept putting money back into the business. So we grew from my guest room that was about this size, like I mentioned, into our game room, or like it's a second family room, like another living room upstairs at that house. And we ended up having like 2 shelves, 3 permanent Warhammer tables set up, and just kind of like people started showing up. We were in the White Dwarf magazine as a stockist, so we showed that we had all the Citadel paints, the White Dwarf, fantasy. We ended up eventually getting 40K stuff.
Very cool.
And then getting into like Mordheim and all these other expansions to Warhammer that were out at the time. And by the time I was a sophomore in high school, we had grown the store to the point where I was ready to actually just put it in, not only to stop getting random strangers showing up to my house randomly and calling me all the time, but we were ready to open up a store. So I then partnered with my dad on the store for the retail store, and we went in together to open it up between 2 pretty major streets. It was 2499 in Morris Road in Flowermound on the way to the airport. And we ran that store the whole time. It was just me. I ran the store through high school. I had 1 employee. That didn't work out. It was very short-lived. And so I ended up opening the store every day right after school and staying open till about midnight. And then I was open every weekend pretty much nonstop. Real hours were like 10 a.m. to midnight. But we like as soon as we closed, we just go play like D&D or something at IHOP or something like that. We'd keep playing, but we just go somewhere else to do it. Or I would just lock the doors and everyone that was there would play till like 4 a.m. So
right.
I didn't have much of like a good work-life balance. I was still in school, as you know. So what I did for school, I would wake up at 6 a.m, do all my homework at school. I would wait for them to unlock the doors and just go sit in the hallway. And I would do homework from about 6:30 until 9:45 is when school started for me. It was crazy late school start. So I had about 3.5 hours to do my homework every day. And if I didn't get it done then it didn't get done. So in high school, that's kind of how I ran the store, and it was a hot spot in the Dallas area. We had all the cool pro painters from Reaper would come down all the time because they're over in Denton. We had a Games Workshop store in the Grapevine Mills Mall that was, like that 15-minute drive I was telling you about. So they would send all their players to us because they didn't have play space. They had like 2 little tables set up in the mall. So we ended up just getting all the players in the Metroplex. Right. We got to the point where every weekend we were at capacity like a nightclub. And so we'd have to set tables up outside sometimes to fill out tournaments and do kind of crazy stuff like that because we'd hit like fire capacity. We'd
Right.
have, I think capacity in that building was 79 people. It was a 3,000 square feet, I think.
Hmm.
So yeah, we would just it was a hot spot back then. We had everything. We had Magic, Magi Nation, the big game that started me into everything, Warcry from Sabretooth Games. It was the predecessor to UFS,
Yeah.
which is now the predecessor to Universes. And so I ran that whole thing, and then I took a 1-year break in 2005 to 2006. I graduated high school, and I had a congressional scholarship, so I used that. I was one of 25 students that made it through all these different tasks to get to go to Europe as an ambassador. So I was in Germany under a congressional scholarship for a year.
Sure.
And so I still did a little dabbling in Warhammer and stuff like that while I was there. There was a Games Workshop store in both of the towns I lived in. But, did that, came back, and when I started college, I opened my store back up in West Texas. So it was still Jasco Games, but a different location. Before that, I had sold my store to Game Exchange before I went to the Congressional Scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
So Game Exchange ran it, but they actually closed the doors basically right when I got back. So they only held the doors open for about a year.
Hmm.
I think it was just a different business model, not quite the same way we run it. And I also had the advantage of being a high school student. So my entire 3,000 student high school or whatever it was, might have been more than that, pretty much all came to my store. So that helped a lot.
Right.
So anyway, reopened it while I was in college. I just did it for fun because I wanted to have, some other revenue to go travel in summers and stuff like that. It ended up becoming way more serious because I can't do anything half-assed, and that's just how it worked. And so we had our store. First, I was doing the same thing, just selling stuff out of my apartment, just shipping stuff off on from eBay and things. And then I was like, well, we're doing pretty good, and Games Workshop's kind of again getting on to us for not having a brick and mortar location. So I opened up a brick and mortar location, just a small one. I was like, we'll just have it there, and we'll still do our business the same way. I'm not going to open up to the public. Eventually opened it back up to the public pretty quickly, and then moved to a bigger store that was about 4,000 square feet across the way from that store, and then just ran that through college. And the year I was graduating from college, so during this whole time I'd been playing quite a bit of UFS. So my Warcry Warhammer Fantasy card game basically died out, and UFS was the new thing from Sabretooth back in 2006, and but basically right when I got back from Germany. And so I had a bunch of solicitations from it. I had demo decks and all kinds of stuff, and I had them, and I was kind of playing around with them for years. But back in 2008, so it's been out for 2 years, I kind of got a little bit more serious and started building my own decks and started going to tournaments. And from 2008 to 2009 was probably my main tournament scene. I was not only traveling to them, but I was also hosting them. I went to Worlds in 2009. I did okay, but I drove straight through to Gen Con from Texas, so I was falling asleep after round 4 or 5 in the middle of my matches.
Right.
Where I probably would have done better there. My very first 2 matches at that 2009 Worlds were against Matt Coles and Jeremy Ray.
That's a gauntlet.
Yeah, so I beat Matt Coles, and then I tied J Ray. And so my first, I had a winning record or not losing record for the first, I think, 4 games, and then fatigue hit in, and I was just I actually remember just being delirious. I have crazy memories of just getting killed by Morgan that I shouldn't have. I just completely was falling asleep during enhances.
Mm.
So anyway, backtracking a little bit. So I ran a lot of UFS stuff. We did Baycon, the Badass Convention. It was a big tournament that we did for in West Texas for the 3, I think it was the 4-point Shuriken block right before they were about to ban a bunch of stuff.
Okay.
So we hosted that one. That was all through Jasco. And then I was working with Fantasy Flight at the time. I was really wanting to do a pro tour circuit, which we ended up doing ourselves. Later down the road, but just doing something that was a little bit bigger, more pristine for Fantasy Flight Games, because their tournaments were kind of lackluster for a while. They had gone from really big to just not really knowing how to transition from the Sabretooth to Fantasy Flight very well. They still kind of have issues with their CCG stuff. It's harder to manage CCGs than it is board games. The support is nuts in comparison. So Fantasy Flight's just not built for that historically. They can do it. They just it's a very different business model. So in the end of 2009, they announced the cancellation of all their CCGs from FFG, and that's when I was coming in, and I was like, before the whole forum panics and burns all their stuff and everything, because it was a nightmare back then in the forums of everything going on with the announcement. Before that, they did this big Christmas sale, and before they told anyone the game was canceled, they put everything on sale for like 80% off. And I bought for my store because they extended the sale to the store. I bought like probably $4,000 of inventory, and then the next week they said that everything I bought was going to be canceled, and I couldn't get anything back. I couldn't send it back, and I was just screwed. They burned a lot of bridges for a lot of retailers and a lot of direct consumers, which after we purchased the game, we had to go, put the fire out on all those bridges and explain that it wasn't us that did it, and we're letting the game go on. I was posting in the forums like, hey, everybody, if I get enough of a positive feedback on this, I'll see if I can, purchase this game. Nobody knew who I was. I was just this dude named Jasco Games with a little orc icon on the Fantasy Flight forums. Probably still see my posts back there if you go find them. And just kind of feeling the waters. How many players could we survive with moving in? I was looking up pricing on cards and how to make all this stuff because it was kind of out of the blue. But it landed on my lap the year I was about to graduate from college. So I graduated the end of 2009. Yeah. So years are flying by. So I graduated in 2009 and bought the game officially January of 2010. The process to buy that took about 2 months long of contract negotiations, price negotiations. We ended up buying all the existing inventory that was left from Fantasy Flight for the 4 blocks that they produced. There was about a 3-week period where I was not going to buy the game. I was like, I just decided, it's too big of a risk, not going to do it. And then I woke up, after those 3 weeks, I was like, no, I'll regret this the rest of my life if I don't take the chance, because I'll always wonder what happens. So I hate doing that. I usually just go for it the way I live. I don't want to pass up opportunities. So what I did is, a lot of people think I come from like a family with a bunch of money or something like that. Actually, both sides of my family were in severe poverty growing up. And I'm actually first generation college student on my mom's side, and second generation on my dad's side, because he went to medical school, but it was a Native American medical school. So
that means
we started out. What's that?
That means it's better. That's what I mean.
It probably does. He got in through I guess scholarships, essentially.
Right, and grants. I mean, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, for being a 4th Ojibwa, and so I'm a 16th, which means I don't get anything.
You missed the window, dude.
It is what it is. I paid for college, so. But yeah, so both of my parents, we started out growing up. I was poor in tiny houses. Actually, one of the houses we moved out of ended up getting condemned right when we moved out of it. They demolished it. It was that bad. It was like an apartment building, I think. And we moved a lot. I moved about 50 times before I moved out, and started pursuing my own stuff. So we moved all over the place. We'd live in like the same town in 4 different houses in a year or something like that sometimes. But eventually, my dad was going to medical school. He eventually paid off his debts, and he was starting to become a little bit more well off. My mom was seeing success. She never went to college, but she has a ton of accomplishments in the medical industry. And so they were kind of growing at the same time. And that period when I was about to start my store is like kind of when they were starting to see success for the first time too.
Right.
So it was really interesting
stuff. I mean, and like, I don't understand anybody who would criticize your parents for supporting your interest. And
no, I have super supportive parents.
That's wonderful. I mean, when I was 14, 15, I was getting more serious about music, and it was the same. Like my dad was like, "Hey, if you want to be real serious about this, we're going to get you a serious guitar." And he spent about the same amount of money that your mom and parents did on your company. It was about a $1,500 guitar. And I went on and I toured with some bands, and because I had this really, really professional tier piece of equipment. I mean, that's just an expense that parents will have to do when, like, if they have a kid that plays lacrosse, with the big time, or they're doing karate. It's just like you just happen to be a Warhammer player, you know?
Yeah, and that's expensive. Warhammer is expensive.
Oh yeah.
I attract to expensive hobbies for some reason, which means all that means is I had to save lunch money.
Right.
I never ate throughout school. I saved my like $5 every week to buy eventual Warhammer units.
Right.
It was nuts. I convinced all my friends to do the same thing. So lunch, we just read Warhammer books. We didn't eat. We saved our lunch money and just never told our parents.
Kept you skinny though. Kept you skinny.
Sort of. It got me in a terrible diet trend of overeating. I would starve all day and then just eat everything in the kitchen when I got home. Gotcha. I had like 12 peanut butter sandwiches or something. It was nuts. But yeah, no, the parental support for anything I've done has been great in my life. I play hockey still a little bit, but I played hockey growing up. Another expensive hobby.
That is a very
expensive hobby. The most expensive of the hobby. But I mean, because of my background, like we would save for years to get like a new glove or something. So it's not. Right. I was basically wearing hand-me-downs up until probably like 3 or 4 years ago when I could actually buy my own equipment.
Well, I mean that's so cool. I mean, and you don't go from a room in the second floor of your house that's basically just where you and your friends play because your mom doesn't want to drive you around to several open stores without having garnered some serious business acumen and being able to then negotiate contracts with big companies like Fantasy Flight, and then eventually, you know, getting big licenses, you know. Which is actually another big thing I wanted to talk to you about was transitioning in licenses from fighting games, which is the traditional thing for Universal Fighting System, to anime licenses. And like, I'm sure a big part of that is because that's where, you know, like anime is cool now, right? And not that fighting games aren't super cool, but like we're running a business, and
I think in 2006 anime was probably already cool, but
right. It wasn't mainstream, right?
Yeah, Steve Fortnite, I mean, he was a big fighting game fan. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Sabretooth was all behind the fighting games because of personal interest, and right. Definitely a lot. Finishing up, the reason I'm bringing up this whole story is so I purchased the game and the rights and everything, taking out 2 student loans to do so. So this wasn't actually like I just have money going into all these big decisions. I was still running a store, so taking it like. I did not close the store immediately when I purchased UFS off of Fantasy Flight. I actually ran my store probably another 2 or 3 years before I was like, I can't do both of these at the same time, and it was just way too much work. And the store, like honestly, it started to kind of annoy me because I get distracted from customers when I'm trying to work on card game stuff. So it went from me just like keeping the store mostly closed and just working in the store to just like, I don't need this store. What am I doing? So that's kind of where that went eventually. I still have a lot of retail experience, and I'm pretty good at running game stores specifically. There's a formula that I think works perfectly for a brick and mortar store. It's going to be hit like anybody else during COVID, but once COVID comes back, you know, the formula still works. If there are any game store owners out there or people interested in owning a game store, there's a formula that if you follow, it will work. Miles Tyler is following that formula right now.
What's the quick and dirty formula? Give me the.
I'm pretty old school with retail. You do want to spend a lot of money on your location. If you're going to cheap out on your location, you're going to cheap out on your profits. So you want foot traffic. That's why I recommend malls. If they're still seeing foot traffic, you want to see like the high-end malls essentially, or being near a school or something like that. Just anywhere where you're going to get a lot of like unnatural traffic, not people looking for you. That's one of the keys. And then demoing every single person that walks into your store, no matter what, is number 2. Games Workshop original strategy when I was running with them and doing business with them was they had a table set up right in front of the door. You couldn't even avoid it, and you would demo whether you wanted to or not.
Yeah, you walked in, you
that
did.
Demo. Strangely enough, it's almost like we feel guilty as customers for wasting their time to do their job to watch this whole demo. Even if I don't care at all, I'll go buy like something. Yeah. Because it drove their sales like crazy back then. That game store, the Games Workshop in that mall was doing $2.2 million a year in sales, which is great for.
I mean, in the 90s,
they sell one product, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, and at that time they were getting those numbers probably around the year 2000.
Oh, okay. Still, I mean,
and in the late 90s too. And then they Games Workshop's been through so many different CEO changes and big changes that their formulas changed quite a bit since then, and they're doing a lot of stuff right again. But they've had some rough spots as a company with just
for sure.
angering their customer base. It happens, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
have to make hard decisions.
I'm sure you can attest to the customers are always angry. I mean, having been, you know, having managed a business, it's the same. Customers are always angry. It doesn't matter what you're doing; they're always going to be mad.
I've found that American customers are more angry than anyone else. But, I think that we've trained our people to have a certain expectation of customer service, where the more you bitch about stuff, the more likely you're going to get whatever you want.
True.
And there's a lot of threats that people do with, you know, ratings and star ratings, and I'm going to give you a bad review. And so, you know, they're used to anyone bending over backwards for them, which, you know, sometimes the customer is always right. We're more like we'll hear everybody out, and everyone has a, you know, an open case with us, and we're pretty reasonable about stuff. We don't like it when you just open up a conversation saying F you, F everything you do.
Yeah.
When you get an email like that, just so you guys are aware, when you're emailing a company, they're probably not going to want to work with that attitude. We're customer service people, like, they get drained out pretty bad when PR is having to deal with nothing but that kind of negative attitude. They're just going to probably put you at the back burner compared to anyone that's reasonably nice to them. It's just kind of how it works. And I don't think our company is doing anything like unreasonable or wrong to anyone. In fact, we're giving people free games and stuff like that. We saved the Evil Dead game, and there's some people that have given us some very great feedback for all that. And then we still get super negative people that think that we're the company that stole their money still, because, you know, they don't
from years. So is that a big part? Is that a part of the rebranding to Universus? The negative sort of cloud that hung over because of UFS? Because I know a few game owners who, when I pitched the game to them, they were like, "Oh, I remember that game. We got screwed." Is the change to Universus partly because of that?
It's definitely, the brand change is definitely to start afresh. It's to get a new stigma, get away from all those burnt bridges, any hard feelings players or retailers had. Because, I mean, the company had at the time gone through 3 companies within 4 years,
right?
Which is a lot. I mean, Jasco, it feels like the time that Sabretooth and Fantasy Flight had the game is like the same or longer than Jasco's had it, but it's completely not the case. Like Jasco, I mean, we've had it for almost 11 years now, I think. And combined, they had it for 2006 to 2009. So I guess it's 4 years.
4 years.
So it's crazy to think that we've had it this long. It doesn't feel like it at all. Like I have so many memories of being able to play back then that it just seems like a long time, I guess. But I don't remember where I'm going with this, actually.
Well, what were you? I mean, you literally owned the game for twice as long as the other 2 owners have had it combined.
Oh yeah, the universe has changed. Yeah, there's just a lot of thought that went behind that. Most people don't change card backs. It's kind of like a curse. Right. I don't think that stuff really affects us so much. Like, I mean, it's not going to affect anyone more than anyone else. Got hit by like COVID, so it's not like it was just us. So, it's more getting a fresh viewpoint on it. New players can come in and see a new game, especially with My Hero Academia. New CCGs tend to do extremely well on first release, so it's kind of like a chance to be a first release after all these years, and really get My Hero the launch that it deserves. It's one of the reasons why we've been very careful not to release something before My Hero, and My Hero has all these stipulations before it to be able to launch from the licensors. So we really want that to be the launch of Universus as a core set, and like the new breath of fresh air that the frames and the gameplay and the characters and the license and all that stuff are going to bring to the game.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I gave you kind of the nutshell of the 12 years or whatever it was of retail that I did.
Well, it's a titillating story for sure. I mean, I had no idea about the. I just, like, in my head, I assumed like this was a family-owned store. I didn't. The last thing I thought in my head was that this 13-year-old kid started this business in the second story of his parents' house. That's super.
Yeah, the only, like, my parents definitely helped me, but it was entirely financially. They came in
Right.
and launched the products for me. And so they launched my store essentially with a budget.
Right.
And it was my job to cover that budget and, pay everything that and learn all the things about taxes and inventory and everything you learn at a retail store, customer
Sure.
service, everything. I'm still extremely retail oriented. Try to make sure that, the Premier Store program, retailers are always getting something back from us. And we do our best. I think we actually are the best for retailers out of any publisher.
Hmm.
I'd say that pretty confidently because I just don't think the rest of the industry is as in touch.
Yeah, I mean, our local game store that does carry Universes and UFS, they love working with Jasco. I mean, that's always the thing. Anytime I need anything, like Tim is the most darling person that has ever existed. And if something does happen, he's oh, I'm so sorry, we're going to fix this, and he's there. So I've always liked the community of UFS is like the biggest draw a lot of the time. And Jasco is a big part of perpetuating that, right?
Yeah, I mean, the community was a draw before we were involved. Like, I loved our community as a player base. We have a tendency to be a little entitled and toxic at times, which is not good for growing the game, getting new players. So what we do is we make sure to step in and make sure that when we see kind of trickle in of like the Yu-Gi-Oh mentality or the Magic mentality where you treat your opponent like trash and you say like negative things, we will snip that in the bud as soon as we find out about it in a big tournament or something like that. I actually have taken several players aside and had a one-on-one and say, this is not the community that we talk like this. You play this game to have fun. There's not a cash prize on purpose because we don't want that attitude. If you want to go play for cash, you can do that independently.
Well, that's
or go play Magic.
That's an important thing that I wanted to actually talk to you about. I mean, this game has an incredible burden of knowledge to it. Coming into the game as a new player 2 years ago, or 2.5 years ago now, it was right when Bebop released, and I had never watched Cowboy Bebop at the time. I just said, I want to play as a dog, and my friend had been trying to get me this plane for months, but I just never made the time for it. It was like my brain exploded from the amount of information that I felt like I had access to because of the way the enhance step works and how many response windows there are and how many cards were in standard. I felt like I needed, like, I love studying, so it's okay for me, right? Like, I go on UFS Ultra and I just looked at one symbol a day, right, kind of thing. But for people who aren't total fucking lore junkies like me, how do you draw in a new player to UFS? I've demoed the game to people and I've tried so many things, but going forward in Universes, what do you think is going to be the way to bring in new players that are going to see the depth of, I guess the field of gameplay is so wide. It must be intimidating to a new player.
Yeah, we've done some extensive new player research. Part of it was done at Gen Con 2 years ago. Bringing in, a new frame, asking a lot of questions, running a demo tournament that went very well. I think we sold out 8 different spots of those demo tournaments with 32 players.
Nice.
And use that opportunity to see, what is confusing people, what is the barrier of entry here. The frames changing for my hero for the demo deck look probably helped about 80% just understand what's going on. And then we found out what was wrong with those frames. We needed to still say, the word foundation attack and stuff on there, apparently. That was one of the big things. As you can see from the new frames, the names are on top now.
Right, they have the little symbols.
These are tough decisions to make when you're going, from a long time game like this, but they're all very R&D based on how to make the game easy just at first glance. So the frames should make things immediately easier for a player. They've already helped a lot. Like, we've slowly been implementing these things. The biggest one, just from when we took over, was changing the block from a circle to a shield. Blocks are one of the most confusing things to teach. Momentum is a little confusing. Forms are ridiculously confusing. So we've been doing our best to clean it up. And when you get into the game, make sure a demo deck is very much going to teach you the basics. We don't introduce assets or actions. We never have under Jasco. But in the old demo decks or starter decks, sometimes you'd get like unplayable stuff where like you wouldn't even get those symbols to match in your deck. You'd have to go buy cards immediately to even play out of the starter. So the game's gone through some tribulation of learning curve and the way it was set up, the rule book being a mess. Right now, the rule book I think is clean, and it's even cleaner with My Hero when it comes out as a booklet. But the LGR is still, you have to have like a doctorate in law to be able to understand what's going on in that stuff. So it's a process, and it's continually, make it easier to join, but it's always going to be hard to master. We already know the appeal once you're in this game is that you can just never be perfect at it. It's you'll never build the best deck that could be built. You'll never play the best that you could play. There's always a possible mistake you could make, and that's like I think the biggest appeal of this game is the deck building, and the depth of play is beyond a chess mind. So you could be a chess master, and this will still get you with statistics and whatever else. There's like so much more to keep track of.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that this game, and I'm not a big card game player. I love telling people that I only started playing Pokemon because I was chasing a girl. I was a musician. Gotta catch them all, dude. And I started UFS, and when I didn't know anything about, like, maybe I dabbled in Yu-Gi-Oh in high school, but I only like had cards, and I just gave them to all my other friends who actually played. But for me, it was the expression of skill, right? And also the like kind of swagger you could express as well. Like you could kill somebody with this basic statted stuff, the way some players play with like just big media stuff, or you could just like, hey, I do this huge technical combo and kill you with a giant frickin' sand grenade or something like that, And it's been so much fun to take things that normally don't, like, on their face value don't make sense, and sort of Mod Podge this wonderfully unique and I'll say interesting engine to work. Getting the engine to work is the most fun part of the game. Another huge thing I love is the lack of is the power of searching is so high in the game. In some of the games, like I've seen the way Yu-Gi-Oh is played, and in Pokemon, searching is so powerful where it feels like every game is the same. But because of checking, and because that searching is kind of reserved for the very top of the scale, right? It really feels like what you drew really mattered that game, right? It wasn't a predetermined outcome. Like you didn't always end up as a flowchart to Z, right?
Right.
There's so many different ways. Every game is different, truly. And I think that's been preserved that way since I started playing, and surely since well before that. So
yeah, the game is, obviously at its core, all the mechanics are the same as always.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest things that have changed are power levels, the increase in attacks. Like I'm sure you've heard the horror stories, as some will call it.
Four
the
attack
3 attack deck, the 4 attack deck, the no attack deck. Those are, we still have a no attack deck, I guess, but it's still it's nothing like what it used to be, right? You're playing to survive and get a combo. You're not canceling everything and milling you out slowly. It's not a miserable death. So the game's definitely changed in the dynamics. The way you think is a little bit different. You can't really board up and just play infinite cancellation like you used to, which is, it's fun as in its own right, but it's definitely probably not the healthiest way for this game to go. It's a fighting game, so you probably should be fighting a little bit. Instead of going, I summoned my spirit bomb, you're dead.
Well, and anytime something like that does come up, it seems to go away pretty quickly. I know people will meme about bans in the game sometimes, but they're usually addressed fairly quickly, right? Like when Shane saw Quan Chi won at the Tampa PCA, it was banned 2 days later. Everybody and their mothers knew Downward Spiral was going to get banned, and if they get banned,
the introduction of public playtest is also going to help this. We've intentionally kept players out of playtest if they're not local to be under our NDAs and under supervision for a long time. But now we feel like it's pretty okay to get through our playtesting, open it up, and as long as it's relatively unknown what you guys are testing, we should still get some pretty good feedback before we're mostly keeping an eye on the top of the power level scale stuff, but some of the stuff that could get a upward boost can also be addressed in those. But by the time it gets to public playtest, it should be essentially what would have been
near where it should be. I'm really interested in that, actually, not just because of the public playtest in general, but also because of the usage of it sounds like it's going to be on Tabletop Simulator. Is that
Probably, yeah.
okay? So how do you feel about like because there's negatives and positives to tabletop as a user experience, and also in its relationship to the business, right? If people are playing on Tabletop Simulator, they may be not buying cards, which is bad for the business, but they're able to share it with their friends more easily, and we're able to keep the game alive during COVID. So it's weird, right? It's got to be strange as the owner.
Yeah, I mean, Tabletop Simulator is not really a problem for us.
Mhm.
Especially for the playtest, it's not going to be like real art. You probably won't even know what character you're actually playing or what
Right.
that's going to be. I'm sure it'll be uploaded later with the watermarks and all that stuff. But no, I mean, obviously our real tournaments, our real gameplay is in person.
Mhm.
Once we're able to do that again
Yeah,
more
of course.
comfortably. And I mean, I know personally, I don't play nearly as well on the computer. I'm slow. I make mistakes because it's a computer, not because I'm making mistakes in the game.
Right.
I don't like it personally, and
Mhm.
I think a lot of people prefer to shuffle and own your own cards and
Oh yeah,
bling
dude.
out your decks and all that kind of stuff. It's just part of the CCG, and I don't think that can be taken away by Tabletop Simulator. Now, if we had our own online client that was customized to be a very good play experience, that's a different story. But again, that doesn't hurt the game in any way because it'd be by us. So
Do you think that's in the books eventually? Do you think there's going to be an
we
online?
would definitely like to. I just don't think that we have as active of a competitive player base that would warrant
To be
the
able to
user
support it.
count for it yet. We have a lot of casuals that's basically uncountable. I know just from talking to our game stores how many random customers come in, buy like a 2-player turbo box of Bebop and some booster packs, and then they have no idea who they are. They don't. We have a lot of players that don't come to big events. Like it's a different category of player, and it's a different attitude to go play in tournaments.
Right.
I think Tim told me Player of the Year or something like that for 2020 or 2019 this season has roughly 700 competitive players registered that go to tournaments. But that's like a fraction of our actual player base. You can see part of it on Facebook, and we don't even promote our Facebook. So once our marketing team comes in there and starts promoting that, like you're going to see kind of a better idea of our real fan base. And My Hero is probably going to quadruple our fan base.
I'm
Is our
excited to see
expectation.
it.
Yeah. So getting more competitive players behind us will make it way more likely to launch a client. I think we probably need to start hitting numbers in the like 3,000-4,000s in a year of competitive, like traveling players. I say competitive, but every store has players that show up every week. They just don't go to PTCs,
Right.
right? Like I would say maybe 1 or 2 players from every group are travelers.
Yeah.
Typically. But that doesn't mean that they don't have a big play group to practice with.
For sure. On the subject of universes, what in a more are you said that the original owner of Sabretooth wanted fighting games because he was interested in fighting games. Is anime the focus because you're an anime like fanatic? Is that your
So
thing?
I do love anime, but I also love fighting games. Like
Sure.
I've mentioned a million times, I've got my own arcade cabinet for MK,
Cool.
and it's like in my basement right now. And I'm a big fan of like tons of nerd stuff. I just always thought that it's very restricting of the game to have all the universes possible to fight against each other, and you're only going with a niche.
I
So
agree.
why not have Marvel and DC in here someday? Have some Star Wars in there. Throw in
It's the
big anime titles.
universal
Yeah,
fighting system.
have characters from anywhere, and
Yeah.
then it's really truly a huge draw because like my favorite character could be in this game just like Smash Brothers. In fact, I think we have way more characters than Smash Brothers does. It's just the variety of licenses aren't just as huge because they'll get 1 or 2. We'll get the whole brand.
So can we expect like some of the other licenses that Jasco has had, like Buffy, Top Gun? Is there going to be a Goose character card?
I can't confirm nor deny the plans
Okay.
there. I will say that we would like to do a couple of our board game brands that aren't in the game as
Right.
at least DLC. DLC season 2, I think, is going to be pretty interesting if I remember correctly what's in that stuff. So, and we're also going to be pushing a lot more Red Horizon in general because, and we have about 15 minutes. If we can either talk Red Horizon for 15 minutes or we can talk. We didn't really get into the publishing side of this whole interview.
Let me do my rapid fire Red Horizon questions. So was Red Horizon a Jason Hawronsky idea?
I would say it was probably 80% my idea. I had a partner, a friend that was helping me start up with Jasco.
Sure.
and he came up with some of the ideas to start up. And then Sean Canada actually helped me round out a lot of the storyline as well. But overall, I needed an IP. I didn't have anything to launch the game with, and so I was almost forced to do it. And so I was like, well, if I'm going to do it, let's do something cool that I like. So I was like, I really like angels with big wings in my games. I like these types of animes. I like guns, shooting lasers. I like mechs. So it's like kind of all in there. Got dragons.
Is Vincent Gray a more polarizing president than Donald Trump in his universe?
I would say, yeah. I mean, he started a civil war, so it's a little bit.
There you go.
Bigger.
Okay,
So
he's
a little
more.
bit bigger.
You heard it here first. More polarizing than Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, he's like kind of brain controlled by a succubus, so it's gonna be
fair. Well, we don't know. We don't know what's going on with Donald Trump. What's next for Red Horizon storyline? Is that going to be filled out with these DLCs?
It probably won't be filled out with the DLC, but it will be filled out. So we have the Natali statue that I've been talking about for the last several weeks.
Right.
That thing is done. I'm actually in the factory quotation right now for it because it's going to be crazy expensive to make this the way we made it. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to get it to a reasonable price point, and it's going to come with a metal card of Natali 2 that we're going to bring back to standard is the current plan. So Natali 2 is a super, super fun version of Natali that I think a lot of, especially the newer players, really like because you can just swing in a big free attack whenever you want. And as long as it's higher or mid. And then, and so having the first metal card available that comes with a heavy duty metal card is going to be really cool. And then we're bringing back 8 cards from her support to become standard legal as well with the new frame, the new My Hero style frame.
Very cool.
But for Red Horizon and completely different foiled out backgrounds, all specialized for it. And so you're going to see, I know Out of Your League is one that's coming back. And if you go back and look at her support from the 3 sets that she's been in and maybe even promos, you can speculate what we're bringing back from her support into standard with this statue. And it's going to have its own watermark for it. So that's really cool. I think the cards might be just as exciting as the statue, but when people see this thing it's really big. The character herself is, I think, about 8 inches tall is the current plan. We might have to modify it, but with the wings and the scythe and everything, it's like a foot tall and over a foot wide.
Wow.
It's a big statue.
It's a gorgeous model. I remember seeing
cool dynamic pose. We're going to start, once I get the approval from my factory that we can actually make this thing, it's going to have the coming soon to Kickstarter stuff, and it's going to be a nice little fun Kickstarter, but it's going to come with storyline development articles. I'm going to be putting together with that statue a booklet that shows all the development of the character. So you can see the original sketches, what she used to look like before she was developed into this character from Genzomon. And you'll see line arts developing. You'll see kind of different artists that I've chosen to kind of capture her look, some of the style guide stuff. The statue itself is going to be the standard perfect representation of the character. And and we're going to have storyline for Natali in that statue as well. So when you get it, you'll get a booklet. And as we do these statues, assuming we can keep them, popular enough to keep doing them, the statues will come with the excerpts of the story that you're really going to get to know what's going on a little bit better, because we do have this 300 plus page graphic novel that's been in the works for a couple years now.
Very cool.
The biggest thing with that is I just keep rejecting the scripts. Since I'm not writing it, I have to keep doing it over and over. And
right.
It's my stuff, so I have to make sure it's right. And I fix, there's no plot holes that the writers put in that aren't accurate to Red Horizon and that kind of stuff. And then the art, because it's so much art, it has to look really good, but it's a lot of pages, 300 something pages. And you can imagine each page costs a certain amount. So it's like building it up over time. But Red Horizon is going to get a big attention once that's all ready, but we're kind of trickling it in now.
In the future, are there going to be, if there are going to be stacker characters in DLCs, because I know this was a point of contention with some people in the community, are the characters also going to have 2 in each DLC pack?
We're planning on that for Series 2 and above.
Okay.
Some of our retailers don't like that idea. They actually are cool with the one.
Right, because they want, but for, and for me, like, I'll buy 4, that's fine, and I'll share the cards with my players. But, like, I understand the other side of this, which is that if I want to buy a playset of things, it is a little bit awkward to have to buy.
Yeah, the first series was really just an oversight. We didn't even think about stackers, to be honest.
I can see that.
Not as a consumer. We were just like, DLC is cool. We're also thinking about getting rid of the packaging. I talked to Deshaun O'Brien today, and he gave me a gripe about it just because it's hard to ship without damaging it.
Right.
So they have to ship it unassembled. And then
Hey, those Indens boxes were great. Just putting my two
those
cents.
are actually crazy expensive to produce.
Really? Okay. All right.
You would think that that'd be like the easiest way to do it. No, it's
No.
we basically took a wash on that entire release.
Oof. I'm sorry to hear that.
It was very expensive. Any starter decks are usually very expensive to make. So we're actually looking into doing the next round of DLC. Maybe it might be Series 3.
Mm-hmm.
Series 2 could still have the same pillow pack.
Mm-hmm.
But we're looking at doing hanging boosters for them instead. And then because the perceived value of the box is definitely a thing. You don't really want this set booster. Buying it as a booster box for 20 or booster pack for $25 for some reason, people just don't like that. That's why it's in its own packaging.
Right.
Really, right. It's psychological stuff. It really doesn't make sense, and it shouldn't be a difference, but it is. So to compensate for the packaging going away and being a big booster pack that hangs, we're probably going to either up the redemption on the back of the pack to several skulls or skull times multiplier,
right?
Or maybe include random cards from whatever set that it is from, if it has a set, like random ultra rares or something, or may come with a pack of the matching set, like just a booster pack. So we're looking at a bunch of different options to make it a little bit more enticing for retailers that ship product, because right now it's a big pain in the ass to ship it in 3 or 4 parts per unit ordered. And then we don't want to upset our customers by having them buy 4 packs of these to get 1 of each character. So we're probably going to just keep it 2s across the board, and you'll just always get 2 characters. But you got to remember, foil paper is one of the most expensive things that we do.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So it could bring up the price. That's the downside to wanting these 4 ofs and everything when there's not even a stacker.
Well, I think it's reasonable to say, oh, well, you get everything in 2, right? Like getting everything in 2 of these packages is fine, but keeping that consistent with the characters, I think, would go a long way for the people who are buying them as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's the option of only putting 2 for stackers, but that makes it very likely that the whole thing will get messed up in manufacturing. When you do weird stuff like that, that's not a easy formula.
Like, it's got to do 2 of each.
Then it's very likely to have manufacturing error.
Right. I hear what you're saying. I have some general UFS. I know you're Jasco is not just Universus and UFS. I know you got the board games, and I own the Buffy game. I own the Cowboy Bebop game. But I only had an hour, so all I'm looking to ask you.
All good.
What do you think about the Chaos, Air, and Water symbols right now, and what do you think in the future is the way to make them more, bring them up in the tiers, the ranks?
Yeah, I mean the symbols kind of go in waves anyway.
Yeah, sure.
Some of them seem to just consistently be good. Like all is kind of always in the top 4, no matter what. I don't know why.
See, my next question was, what's your least favorite symbol, and why is it all?
All's not my least favorite symbol. I like all. But,
fair enough.
No, my favorite symbols kind of change. Like to play, they change over time, just because some cool strategies come out every time with different mechanics.
Of course.
The least favorite for me to play is probably good. It's just grindy and doesn't usually have I don't know. It's always been very defensive.
Mm-hmm.
It has good options to win, but and be aggressive. But it's just I maybe have some PTSD playing it. But we're always working on. We want to first of all make sure that every symbol has relatively the same number of cards in the card pool. That's one of the things that we started with Jasco. We don't just put random symbols on stuff. We try to make sure the only thing that's going to really tilt the card pool's symbol spread is when starter decks come out.
Right.
Because until the next one comes out, you only have half of the symbols represented with those extra characters.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you'll see DLC always has all 12 symbols represented. The booster packs will have an even spread every time, with the exception of box toppers. And so that's one of the steps we take to try to keep it balanced. And then the power level, really, it's going to depend on what characters are doing what gimmicks, and that really changes how strong a symbol is. In fact, the more gimmicky a character is, the worse it is for the symbol overall. Because you're kind of tied into these smaller strategies, and the broader symbols for whatever format will tend to be the more competitive overall symbols.
Yeah, I think that is the case for specifically Chaos and Water. A lot of those characters and the support by extension are characters that are doing a very pinpointed thing or strategy. And so if you're not subscribing to that strategy, you can't use those cards.
Well, you can also see, like, Air specifically. Air does a lot of different stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're trying to see Air as a symbol as a whole, you're seeing support for all the different things that Air does, which means it's not all unified to do one thing really, really well.
Right.
It has been really good. Like, it's like the things that it does are just good, like readying stuff, clearing the card pool, momentum, speed. Air is good at just keeping you going, and it's very aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say for all of those symbols you mentioned, the thing that they're probably lacking right now is just really, really good defense.
Yep, they lack defense. I 100% agree with you there. Is that something you think will be addressed in the DLCs coming next year?
Potentially. The DLC does usually kind of give you a little workarounds for stuff.
Speed bump, for sure. Yeah. A speed bump. Okay. Yeah. Why do you hate JoJo?
What do you mean?
I've heard that Jason Hawronsky hates JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
I do not.
What?
Yeah, I don't know why that rumor would go around. I have some weird rumors about me, actually.
Well, that's good. We heard it here first. Jason doesn't hate JoJo, and it's the next set. Confirmed.
Yeah. What? Confirmed. What was? There's a really weird rumor going around about me. I can't remember. Something about my favorite card or symbol or something. I don't remember.
Well, what is your favorite UFS card or Universes?
Oh boy,
doesn't have to be in standard.
I actually don't think I have a favorite card.
Okay, that's a good stance to be in for sure.
Like I like mechanics a lot. So I have a game design background and all this stuff. So I like stuff that works in synergy. So it's usually a combo that I like more than any individual card, and I like finding combos that people haven't thought of yet. I think a lot of people do.
I think you and I would get along.
Most of the decks that I play are very Johnny combo. They're not spiky. Like they have competitive elements, but they're not like that's what they do. I really want to pull off this really cool thing that no one thought of.
For sure.
And get it out there. A lot of people hide their deck lists and hide their super secret tech. I have no reason to do that. So I like to go, what has no one thought of? Let's try to bring it out into the public and see what people think.
Well, whenever anybody asks me about lists and things like that, like I had a friend that came up and said, "Hey, show me your Takeda list. Can I play it?" And I said, "Yeah, here." And I gave him beta from my list that I played at the first retro tournament, and he went and played it. So I've been like that. But one thing I will say is that probably, some people want to hide their cards because of diversity in general, and that's not something we have to go into here. I don't need to have that conversation, but that is probably part of it.
It's definitely a thing. I think it really depends on your confidence. You either feel like you're the best or you don't feel like you're the best.
I'm with you.
Feel like you're the best.
Yeah. If I'm the best at this character, I'm gonna take it anyway. Right. So I'm with you there.
So I think that's kind of either newer player angst or less experience in tournament scene angst. Mm-hmm. Being afraid of diversity, like I've never been afraid of diversity. That's just, you either go in a popular character or you don't. That's your choice.
Okay, last question. I have a friend who's also named Jason, although he's British, and he has this great idea for a PTC. He calls it Boats and Throws. Okay.
Oh, I like this. This is like, so I've thought about this exact same thing. I know where you're going with this.
So we get a cruise ship, okay?
Exactly.
We throw a PTC in their grand ballroom, okay?
Yep. Free
beer, daiquiris, whatever. It's going to Mexico.
Let's wait for coronavirus to end. Cruise ships are the worst. In fact, you can't even get on one until March. They're all completely shut down in North America.
Yeah.
So I know this because Alex Alexopoulos, who runs a lot of our organized play, is terrified of flying. He will not get on an airplane, so he only takes boats places.
Interesting.
So I know he's stuck in Canada until boats are going again. So
wow.
Yeah, there we go. And I think even going from Canada to the U.S., you can only get in by plane right now. So he's just not going to be here until he can.
There you go. Oh wow, that's like what's her name, the European girl that only takes boats because she wants to get her footprint down. I forget her name.
So here's my opinion on that theory, because it's 7:00 now. Love it. I've thought about it myself. I think a cruise UFS tournament would be so awesome, and the community would get to bond even better. It's like, I love food, and cruises supposedly have a bunch of food. I've never been on a cruise, and I've always wanted to. I'm kind of too busy for vacation, so forcing vacation to be work, love it.
Done deal, man. We'll make it happen. We'll make it happen. Well, I have 1,000 more questions, but I know you got to go. I wanted to thank you so much for coming on. Maybe
thank you for having me.
I can have you on again for all of my other questions. But for now, thank you very much for coming on. And I'll get this out to the masses. And
yeah, we'll talk about publishing and licensing and all that stuff at some point. Like
I'd love to get.
I can talk forever, and I get derailed pretty bad. I got some bad ADD, so these conversations to get like a full story together, it's gonna take days. I'm like an old man telling stories here.
Well, I'd love to get a part 2 out at some point, but you go get dinner, man. Thank you very much for coming.
Sounds good. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right, man.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.